Hello, everyone. Coming up is an interview with the very lovely Jill Whalen, who, amongst other things, is a blogger. In that she writes a blog every week, and I find it really, really useful. It's all about this wondrous human experience that we're all having, and deepening our understanding of how life works. I find her blogs to be very straight to the point, very clear, and can really resonate with them and see what she's talking about at play in my own life. So I was really grateful that she was happy to hop online and have a conversation so that you all get to hear her experience with transformation in her own life and how the three principles understanding has helped her to really understand how life works and to enjoy this, like I say, this wondrous human experience. Another thing about Jill that I really loved, and you'll hear in the interview, is that she doesn't get hung up on what the three principles are, so mind, thought, and consciousness, because it's not the words that we need to get fixated on, it's what this understanding is pointing to. That's the key, that's the truth, it's the space that this and the truth that this understanding is pointing to. And of course, there are lots of other spiritual teachings and various things like that that also point to the truth. What I found with the three principles is that it's very, very simple and very clear, and it's not adding ideas and concepts and tools and techniques to the mix. If you then want to do any of those things, that's absolutely fine, because it's not saying don't do anything. It's not saying anything like that. It's not instructing you to do anything. It's simply pointing you in the direction of truth. It's an understanding of how our experience of life happens from the inside out. And once you see that, it's so freeing, it's liberating. And the way to continuously see and deepen into this understanding is to stay in the conversation. And that's why I've invited Jill to have this conversation with me, to support the members of this group to stay in the conversation, hear from other people. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions or comments, then please put them below or send me a PM. Jill, at the end of the interview, mentions that she's happy for people to contact her either via email, or you can arrange a chat with her. So take her up on that. If something you hear in what she says really ignites something in you, or you've got a question for her, then let her know. And yeah, what my invitation is to continue to stay in the conversation, looking at our true nature and how to live from that space, because that is what is going to enable you to show up as your true self in your business and in your life, and it will transform all the areas of your life as it has and is doing with me. And what I've noticed is the more I stay in the conversation, the deeper and deeper my understanding and connection to myself increases. So enjoy, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
So for me, what happened with me is I had my own business. I was a pioneer in the website marketing industry in SEO, and if anyone knows what that is, helping websites get found in Google. And I had been happily doing that as a mom at home for years, and my kids have grown up now. But 4 years ago now, my I was gaining weight, and you get older, you gain weight, and I had known for a few years that I really needed to do something I wasn't eating very healthy, and I wasn't, and I was drinking a lot and stuff like that. So I just decided finally that I needed to lose weight, and that magically was like the start of my overall transformation. Like it became, didn't want to do it as a diet or anything like that. It just became a lifestyle change. And so the more healthier I got by, eating healthier foods, the less I cared about drinking alcohol, and things just started to change that way. And so I started looking into more like spiritual kind of stuff. I had dabbled back and forth in things like that. I wasn't, I wouldn't say like a lifelong seeker or anything like that, or a self-help junkie, but so I was listening to Hay House, and I heard Michael Neal's show. I heard a bunch of different shows, and some were okay and some were a little kooky. um, but I heard Michael, and I was like, this guy's a genius. Like I just, like, I didn't know what the heck he was saying, but I knew he was, well, it sounded true to me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I signed up for his newsletter, um, and I would read the things he posted, and again, I didn't really get it. Oh, when I signed up for his newsletter, he sent a video, a link to a video he had done, a talk he had given at a conference. And I listened to that. And again, I was just like, wow, he's so, there's something to this stuff. And I sent it to my husband, because usually if I can't understand something, I thought it was maybe just too high level. And my husband will get it because he gets more, science-y stuff. Or I thought there was some kind of science to it. And, he listened to it, and I said, well, what do you think? And he's like, I don't know. He's just saying that our thoughts create our feelings. And I'm like, I know, but, but what does that mean? And the two of us were kind of like, I don't know. It just means your thoughts create your feelings. And so we both listened over and over to that one thing. We didn't realize there was, hundreds of other ones out there that he had made. And, but, every time you'd hear it, you'd hear something a little bit more. And then I did finally find another video of Michael's, and this time George Pransky, another person in the Three Principles, was introducing him, and he said something about three principles, and George was like, to me, he looked like, like an Amway salesman or something, and he's talking about three principles. I'm like, uh-oh, what have I gotten myself into here? I literally thought this was some kind of crazy cult, or they were going to start selling me vitamins or something. I don't know. And I kind of was like, oh well, I almost threw it away at that point. But again, I listened to Michael's talk, and I'm like, this is interesting. So I looked into what the three principles were online, and heard about Sid Banks, and there's a website there, but it was kind of cruddy, and so that didn't give me much confidence. And then I did find the Three Principles movies site, which was good, looked nice, had lots of stuff, but I was afraid to look at any videos but Michael's, because I didn't want to be somehow like brainwashed into this cult, the cult of the three B's. And so I listened to all of Michael's stuff up there. And then finally I branched out, and I saw some stuff from Jenny and Rudy, who were married at the time. And that was like really interesting, because Jenny really spoke to me. She had talked about her anxiety and her shyness, and that was, sort of what I had lived with my whole life. And it was, after listening over and over to different things, she said something like, our thoughts create our feelings, which is, what I had already known Michael said, but I heard it in a totally different way. I suddenly had the flash of what that meant, because I had a situation with my husband the night before, and I saw how I had created this whole situation in my head. My husband said one word, and I had a whole story. And that's, I actually tell this story in my book, and I think it's a blog post on my blog, whatdidyoudowithjill.com. If you look up how thoughts create our feelings, there's a blog post about it. And it just hit me, and I suddenly got it. Oh, I know what that means. How we can just make up a whole story in our head, based on one word or whatever, just by anything, based on everything that we've ever learned in our lives. Um, we create, we fill in the blanks and jump to conclusions and create stories. And once I saw that, um, stuff started to fall into place better. I listened to more of Michael, and suddenly he was making more sense to me. Um, and so that was sort of the beginning of my journey. And after, I don't know if it was before or after I heard about that, when I just decided to quit my whole business, just because I just wasn't interested anymore. And that was my passion for 17 years. It might have been before the principle, but just I was changing already from getting healthier. What I really saw from getting healthy, and like I saw how identity isn't fixed. Like we think our identity is a solid thing. I am an SEO consultant. I am someone who hates vegetables. I am someone who is allergic to exercise. I mean, those are things I used to say to people and really believed that was me. And then to see how I could change overnight into somebody who loved vegetables, loved to exercise, didn't even care about my old business anymore that I was so passionate about. I'm like, huh, like how can that be, that you can be one thing one day and another thing another day? Because it was 6 months. I mean, within 6 months time I had transformed. Thus the name of my blog, What Did You Do with Jill? Because people would ask me, and that was even before I learned the three principles. People would ask me, what's what's did you get abducted by aliens, or something like that? And to me, that's like so much the crux of this stuff. If people can see that their identity isn't fixed, that it's not solid, it's just beliefs that we think are us, and it's all created by thought. It's all thought created, just like everything we think about other people. Our own identity is made up. we're sort of just made up people in a way, our whole life. So that's sort of my backstory. I don't know if you have some specific questions about that or anything else.
Well, you mentioned there that you had already, before knowing the three principles, you'd noticed these changes in your life, but didn't necessarily know how you'd done that, what was kind of going on there. So when you started looking more into the three principles, what did you start to see then? How did that kind of make sense of what had happened for you?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of explained it, like the whole identity thing, the fact that I could be something one day and a whole different person another. It showed me that that's thought created. And so while I had heard thoughts create feelings, if you take that a step further, it's more than just feelings. Thoughts create our whole experience of life. Thoughts create our whole identity of who we are. Identity to me is just beliefs, and beliefs are just thoughts that we keep on thinking, that we've thought forever, and it's all just changeable. So it sort of just explained it, which was what I sort of had set out to investigate, not consciously. I don't think I consciously set out to investigate it, but I got so curious about identity, so that explained it for me, what was happening. And it opens up the world. I mean, to me, that's one of the most helpful things about this understanding, is understanding that our identity is not fixed. So for me, like every time I would say something like, oh, well, I'm the kind of person that does this or whatever, oh, well, I don't do that. I now, if I don't hear myself say stuff like that as much anymore, but if I do, I question it and say, well, is that really true? Or is that old Jill? I have old Jill and new Jill. For a while, I was kind of stuck between the two Jills, but I old Jill's just gone, and now I see that new Jill is ever changing as well, because it's all I'm just thought created. Everything about me, I can be. It opens up the world to us to see this. We can be anything. We can, we aren't someone who doesn't like this or does like this. That's all. It's all open. It's all up for grabs, which is so cool. So if I talk to other people like that, say, well, I've always been whatever. I mean, I hear that. That's a red flag, and it's an opportunity to say, well, really, and to get them to see. Maybe they don't always, but to show them how that's thought created, because it's an identity, which is a belief, which is thought. It all tracks back down.
Yeah. That's definitely what I'm discovering for myself as well. And you've written a book, so I'd be interested to know how that came about, and whether the three principle obviously the book will talk about the three principles understanding, but is that an example of how you've been able to experience more and be able to kind of do things that you might not necessarily have thought about doing before?
Yeah, well, the book, it's called Victim of Thought, Seeing Through the Illusion of Anxiety. So for me, what I really saw was that I had lived my whole life with this low level of anxiety throughout my whole life. I didn't know it was there. I mean, I was a successful person. I spoke at conferences all across the world. I married for 30 whatever years and had 3 good kids, and yet I was this anxious person, and the 3 principles, learning that cleared my head somehow, and and the so the anxiety just started disappearing, because anxiety is just thoughts too. And I had another, my other really major insight was I had been learning, watching a lot of three principles videos about addiction. At first I was just ignoring all the addiction ones, because I'm like, I don't care about addiction. I don't have that. I don't need that. And so I saved them all and I wasn't watching them. And then I'm like, oh, let me just watch one. And I was like, whoa, this is really interesting. And then I started watching some other ones about addiction, and it started getting clearer and clearer in my head that life is just one big addiction. And what it is, this is for me, what I saw was we were always seeking to feel better, seeking for happiness somehow. And so for me, my anxiety was always causing me to want to feel better somehow, because I didn't know it was there. So I would drink, I would have special friendships that made me feel good, or I thought they were, my husband, other women friends, my kids, my computer, the internet, all these things that everything was an addiction. And I was fine as long as I was able to use my addictions. But if something took me away and seemed to disturb my peace, I'd fall apart and totally, lose it. And so it was a constant striving to feel better. And I realized that's what life's all about. But then I also knew in the back of my head, but wait, I know this stuff that it's our thoughts that are creating our happiness, and that happiness is inside of us, that we're born happy, and that's our default state. So wait a minute. So all these things that I thought were giving me happiness was just my thoughts. And then boom, like I saw all my addictions like in a flash. I had this like download from the universe while I was taking a shower, and I just saw everything from birth till the present time of all these addictions. And then after that, I mean, and the addictions wasn't even drinking. I didn't even really think of that in my little insight. It was more like my addictive friendships. But after that, like, I had no interest in getting drunk, or I still, I'll still have a glass of wine almost every night. But if I start to feel that buzzed feeling, which is what I used to go for when I would drink, I have to put it away. Like, I don't want that feeling, because that ruins my good feeling that I already have. But it just came to me in that flash. And so the book is sort of, details my whole experience of anxiety, and how now I still get anxious, but I don't care as much. Like, I can sometimes even watch it happening in the background, and I can still sometimes get caught up in it, if I get worried about a health issue or something like that. But it's just not, it doesn't have the same quality as before. And it, like if I'm traveling or something, I was in England in May, I think, and I had to take some trains and stuff, and I was like, normally my head would have been I kept calm, but I could see almost up here, like the thoughts, like, oh no, make sure you get on the right train, blah 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 blah. But I just kept calm, looked at the signs very carefully, much more present, and didn't just hop on a train because I thought maybe it was the right one, which I might have done, a year before or something like that. And so it's cool to, like, you can watch it, you can see your thoughts the more you know it. And for me, what's been the most helpful thing is becoming more aware that we're thinking beings, that thoughts always going on. And so you can't be dragged around by them and become a victim of them. And that's, where the title victim of thought comes into it, because it is an illusion in our heads. And so I recommend that people just start to observe their thoughts, like just during the day. You can meditate if you want, but you don't even have to meditate, but just realize how much thought's going on in your head. Don't worry about the content of it, but see that thoughts going on, because you just don't know. Like, I didn't know till I was laying down in yoga the first time I took yoga, and I was like, at the end, you lay down in shavasana for a few minutes, and I was like, holy cow, like layers and layers and layers of thoughts were going on, thoughts about the thoughts about the thoughts about the thoughts. But when you start to look at them, I liken it to like cockroaches. You shine a light on cockroaches and they scatter, and your thoughts, they can't really live under your scrutiny. And so, I mean, for some people, it disturbs them too much. So you have to be a little careful doing this. But that's why I say don't look so much at the content, but just to notice how much thought. And I think that alone can sometimes take away a couple of layers. I mean, now I only have 1 or 2 layers going on. For the most part, though, my head is so much clearer, and that is the key, because with a clear mind, everything's just easier. Everything makes more sense.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I love about the 3 principles understanding is that it is an understanding. It's not a method, it's not a technique, it's not a tool to use. And that's something that is so refreshing to me, because I've been a coach for 10 years and always had this toolbox. And now I'm finding that, obviously in the moment, if I felt called to use a particular tool, then fine. But I'm not. It's not tools first. It's right. Presence first, and just understanding how the human experience works. What it's all about and what's behind it all. That seems to so far be enough. Just being in that conversation. So, but it's great, like you say, you just sort of mentioned a couple of things there about just noticing your thoughts. So you could argue, well, that's doing something. But like you say, it's not necessarily to look, don't analyze the content, but just be aware of, thoughts come and go, and quite a lot of them.
Right. Being aware it's I mean, and if you look at any spiritual tradition or anything, it always comes down to that, just being more aware. And in fact, it was Eckhart Tolle that, I used to listen to him a lot before I heard of the 3 principles, and he is the one that always would say, just during your day, be observant of what you're thinking. And I mean, yeah, I don't care. Maybe there's a technique, but there's nothing wrong with using techniques if it works for you. And that's what works for me. It doesn't mean it will for everybody, but yeah, I don't know. To me, that's where it's at, because it's just to show you that we're thinking beings. The other thing is to see that other people and situations can't be the cause of your feelings, your grief, your happiness, your sadness, your anger, your madness, because that's the place that just doesn't make sense to most people. And this is where it's inside out and upside down and backwards and stuff, because we've all been taught that our feelings, that other people and situations can make us feel a certain way, and they can't. And that's so confusing. So for me, what I think is so important is just to find evidence of that in your daily life. You know, I can tell you that, but it's not going to make sense. But when you see after the fact, usually when you're in the middle of it and somebody seems to be making you mad, you're not going to see it. But if you look at it later and say, well, all right, I know it. If you have to first have an insight and believe that it's coming from you, and then say, all right, how was it coming from me? You know, and then, you know, you can kind of see, oh, wait a minute, I had those thoughts and blah blah blah, and I made up this. You know, and you can see it after the fact, and every bit of proof you can get to, you know, it just reinforces it, because you don't really believe it, you know. As much as you believe it, like, it still feels like my mother's, you know, being a pain in the ass, whatever, you know, or, you know, but, you know, I used to say I had 3 people where I like couldn't see this, where like it really feels like it was coming from them. And, you know, it was my husband, my mother, and one of my daughters. And now I said that to somebody, you know, a month or 2 ago. And then I thought, you know what, those aren't even, those are kind of loosened up on me as well. So don't try to like see it with the hardest people at first is what I recommend, you know, because just look at it in just more easy easy stuff, and little things that happen during the day. See how you created it. But eventually these harder people over time, sometimes, or with insight or whatever, you'll start to see more and more how it's you that have created the way you
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah. I kind of, one thing I observed yesterday was my 2-year-old son was just seemed to just be crying for no apparent reason, you know, that it was obvious. And my husband was getting really annoyed by it, and I wasn't. And I just thought, well, the same, you know, we're both experiencing the same noise.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was, because we were all sat around having dinner. So I was enjoying my dinner, eating my dinner, whereas my husband was finding it difficult to enjoy his dinner because of the
Yeah,
constant the
because
crying.
of his thoughts in the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. So he was like saying, you know, he was like blaming our son for him not enjoying his dinner, and I was just thinking, well, I'm enjoying my dinner, and he's the same things happening.
Yep.
So that was just an interesting.
And those are that's like a perfect example of times to, especially because to see how 2 different people can experience it. So there's proof right there. You know, how can one person experience it one way and another person experience it different ways? Shows you it's not the kid crying that causes it. And it's also a time, like if your husband was interested, where he could notice that, well, okay, you're not feeling it, you know, maybe I don't need to feel this way or whatever. Like, I mean, again, as a practice, and I know we don't have practices, but I do for myself. If I'm in a situation that I'm noticing that I'm annoyed, where before I wouldn't have even noticed because my thoughts just took me wherever and I just got dragged around. If I'm feeling annoyed now, then to me that's a signal that, oh, I'm thinking something, you know, it's not whatever is around me that's annoying me. And I can catch it faster now, and I can try and get back to my default state of happiness and well-being. And it's like a, you know, like you get this nice middle that's your default state, and you can get off the rails, you can go, but you can kind of tune back into that if you notice it. But it's we most of us go through life and don't notice these things, and you don't have to, but I don't know, I'd rather feel good. Not bad. And
Yeah,
so practicing for me in small little things that seem annoying, I'm hoping that when the really bad stuff happens, I'll at least, I don't know, have a better chance of seeing it for what it is, you know?
yeah, yeah. But that's the cool thing, isn't it, about the 3 principles being an understanding, is you can, with that, if you do find that you want to do yoga, or you want to do some meditation, or you want to do something that supports you being able to have a clear state of mind, then great. That's, you know, that's
Right.
fine.
And knowing that it's not those things that are giving you the
That's,
happiness, but
yeah,
it's, yeah,
That's the key. Yeah, I think
and that's it. For me, it's tuning into my own well-being, and whatever ways, and it's going to be different for everyone. However you tune into your well-being is good. And again, you don't have to. You can still have a bad day and feel bad and be okay with that as well. And that's the other cool thing,
Yeah, so that's the other thing is you don't have to there's nothing to change. We are going to have thoughts that create these feelings of sadness and but that's okay, because we're human, and humans have this full kind of spectrum of emotions that we experience. We're here to experience. So just to finish off, Jill, it'd be really great to hear how you understand the three principles, because we've spoken a lot about thought, which I think is a great entry point for people, because everyone recognizes that they have thought, and so that's great. But obviously in the three principles we talk about two other ones, and obviously one which are key to the kind of what's behind thought, and it brings in that other aspect of, you said that we're not our thoughts, and you mentioned what's happened to Jill, who is Jill. So it'd be we've not kind of touched on that, so if you wouldn't mind just sharing at the moment how you see the principle of mind and the principle of consciousness, that would be lovely.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think of this understanding as the three principles. To me, it's not helpful to know what mind, consciousness, and thought are. I don't see how it all goes together like some people do. That's not the helpful part to me. But I mean, to me though, like mind is what I'm talking about, that innate wellness inside of us that we can tune into. It's everywhere. It's something that we can all have access to, and it's our default state. So that's when I was talking about that, our innate health and wisdom. That's what I think of as mind. I think of them all as the same, really. I think of consciousness a little bit differently than sometimes you hear people talk about in the three principles, because I've learned so much about like non-duality and things like that, that to me, consciousness is who we are. Three principles, they talk about it as awareness. So I guess what I was saying about being aware is just our consciousness. But to me, it's what we all are. Everybody is this consciousness that's looking out of our personal eyes. And that's our true self and our true being. But see, then I think, well, that's what I said about mine. They're all so, it's all just one big pile, and it really doesn't matter what you call them. It's just knowing that, to me, the most important thing is knowing that our thoughts create our feelings. Happiness is always inside of us. Nobody else can make us feel a certain way. And no matter what happens, nothing can destroy our mental well-being, our psychological health. That's, to me, what all you got to really know.
Yeah, again, you're speaking words that I love to hear, because how I see the three principles understanding is that yes, it's a way of pointing people to the truth, but if you're going to get caught up on the words of each thing, you're kind of missing the point of it.
I think it's more to me, it's more distracting to even talk about the three principles. So if I talk to people who don't know this stuff, and even in my book, I gave kudos to the three principles for introducing me to this understanding, but I didn't then, that was it. At the beginning of the book, I just mentioned that's where that my inspiration comes from, the three principles understanding. But after that, it's all just how I see things. And it's, so to me, it's just confusing because then people are like, what are the three principles? And they, and it just takes them away from what's really important, just understanding where their experience of life is coming from.
Yeah. Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jill. And I do share your posts in the group, but if you wouldn't mind just saying again how people can subscribe to your newsletter and get in contact with you, that would be great. And
Awesome, yeah. Yeah, it's whatdidyoudoWithJill.com. And you can sign up for the newsletter there. You can contact me there. There's a contact form. I think on the contact form, if you scroll down a little lower, there's a way to schedule a conversation with me for free if anyone wants to just have a chat like this. So yeah, I love talking to people. You can email me. I answer questions, whatever.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you.
You too. I've learned a lot. Thank you. Which is one of the wonderful things, isn't it, about being in conversation with people, is you just hear things in a different way, and yeah, love it.
Great. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.